What up, baby?
That's good.
What's it been? 4 or 5 years?
It's about, man.
So what's up? You back for good?
Nah. That's just temporary, you know? Trying to work and pay back these loans, man.
Right.
Hello?
I want to help you, Lee.
And why is that?
Because you want me to.
What up, baby?
That's good.
What's it been? 4 or 5 years?
It's about, man.
So what's up? You back for good?
Nah. That's just temporary, you know? Trying to work and pay back these loans, man.
Right.
Hello?
I want to help you, Lee.
And why is that?
Because you want me to.
Hello. Good evening. Hello. Great to see everyone. We're going to give people a little time to hop on. Great to be here with you. Hello. Wonderful. Nice to have you with us. We'll start in just a moment. We'll give people time to hop on. We're in for a fantastic evening. A fantastic discussion. So excited. So excited. I get to marry two of the things that I really I enjoy most, which is mental wellness and Black community. My favorite things. Fantastic. Come on in. Come on in. Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes. Hello. Hello. Wonderful. Thank you. Hi. Hi. Great to see you all. Wonderful. Yes. Hi. Fantastic. We'll give it, oh, maybe another minute or so before we get started. Let people just hop on in. We sort of roll out the carpet for our special guest this evening. We'll sort of get everything set up. Oh my goodness. Wonderful. Fantastic. Hi everyone. Hi. Hello. 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 Great to see you. Great to see you. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started then. So, thank you for joining us this evening. I am Dr. Senia Bembe with the Race Recovery Project. I now call myself the Chief Medical Advisor because I feel like there needs to be a conversation that it covers all of what we do in the Race Recovery Project that is potentially also connected to our wellness and our health. And because I am the physician on staff, I am delighted to be able to bring dialogues and conversations and influence to the Race Recovery Project that are informed by my medical background and have contributions to our broader community health. So I am so glad to be with you. Let me tell you a little bit more about who the Race Recovery Project is. So, the Race Recovery Project is a now 3-year-old, actually going on 4-year-old endeavor by two built by 3 Black women in the Boston area. When we realized the experiences that we were having as adult Black Americans against some of the unknown, unseen effects of racism, those internalized parts of racism. And so we endeavored potentially to begin to create in conversations, create structures, and create environments that would dispel, fa- push against, and really recoil any of the effects that we were starting to feel like we were succumbing to in this life, in this American life as Black women. That is the Race Recovery Project. We began as a small little conversation that we were having in the library in our local town. And now it has grown to this platform where we have conversations just like those we had in person, but now for the whole broader community. And tonight's conversation is such an exciting one. Oh my goodness, all of them are exciting, but this one in particular, because we cover so much ground in this conversation. I'm not going to sit here and talk too much, but we cover so much ground in this conversation that I think we have lots of we'll have lots of opportunity to discuss the interplay between health and race and mental health and adult and gender, and there'll be so much to discuss here. So I'm so delighted that you decided to join us this evening. I'm just so glad that you're here. Now let me get set the stage right for our guest, for you to introduce you to our guest for this evening. His name is Daniel Callahan, and Daniel is yet young but an amazingly productive young man. He has done some wonderful things and is inspiring because he has so much that he wants potentially to influence relative to all the things he's going to be continuing to do. So he's a multimedia artist. He's our guest for this evening, filmmaker and designer, merging a legion of disciplines, including painting, digital photography, film, music, writing, and performance. Daniel works to craft immersive experiences incorporating story, ritual, and the human form to explore aspects of resilience and mysticism. Daniel is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania School of Design, where he received a Bachelor's of Applied Science in Fine Arts and Africana Studies, and Emerson College, where he received a Master's in Fine Arts in Film and Video. Daniel is recipient of the Donor Circle for the Arts Grant, the New England Foundation for the Arts Creative City Grant, a Mass Cultural Council's CYD Teaching Artist Fellow, and a Creative Entrepreneurship Fellow of the Greater Boston Arts and Business Council. Best known for his painterly technique of masking, a ritual painting of the face used to reveal rather concealed inner senses of self. Daniel and his work have been featured at the Museum of Fine Arts, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, the Institute of Contemporary Art, excuse me, the New Orleans Museum of Art, and the Queens Museum, as well as in the publications such as Believer Magazine, the Bay State Banner, Words Beat in Life, the Global Journal of Hip Hop Culture. He is also the founder and principal artist of the Create and Record, a multimedia art and design company, and he is instructor at the Institute of Contemporary Art. I'm going to bring him on stage with us now. There he is. Hi, Daniel. I think you're muted, so I want to make
Yeah,
sure.
yes, yes.
Hey,
Hello, hello, thank you.
so good to have you with us. So good to have you with us. I'm so excited about this conversation we're going to have tonight. There are very few people I think we are able potentially to cross so many different layers in life experience that you're bringing to us tonight. So I'm really delighted about that. So thank you for joining us.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, can I do a little bit of also sort of while with you on stage a little bit, talk a little bit about your film Come On In. Um,
Absolutely.
you wrote, directed, acted, and produced it. It was selected for the film festivals, a number of them, including the Roxbury International Film Festival, the Boston Sci Film Festival, sci-fi, the Urban Media Makers 2020 Film Festival, and a load of others. And you describe it as this sort of psychological drama, which obviously that's in my wheelhouse. I'm right there with you. I'm going there with you.
Word, word.
um, t- and you really you have a story behind this movie.
Mhm.
Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about. Tell me a little bit about the story behind how you got to this place with this movie.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I tell people that it's a narrative film, but there's certainly pieces of myself in it. And it really kind of stemmed from a period in my life where I was definitely struggling with my mental health and was looking for a way to sort of find myself again and um, use this art form of masking as almost a therapeutic well, it was a therapeutic intervention for myself, and it was a way for me to go inward and to really kind of face myself, face the things that I've been going through, and it was a really transformational moment in my life. And I wanted to I sort of came out of that experience with all this sort of newfound understanding about who I was and my relationship with my world
Mm,
um and it was so important to me, but I also recognized how difficult that experience was, and having the support systems I had were so key. Having the community was so key, and knowing that many people don't have that. And even though I did have that, it was still extremely difficult and was scary and was trying. And so I knew that this was a really important thing for me in my own artwork to address. Mainly because we always talk about it, this sort of stigma of mental health or mental illness, I should say,
yeah,
in the Black community, and lack of resources in the Black community, and not knowing exactly how to talk about it in the Black community. And so
yeah.
I knew I wanted to use this experience as a way to not only find meaning in my own life, but also to allow that space for others to find meaning in theirs as well.
That's fantastic. Did you And so how did you though? I mean, so it is true that no one's immune to the stigma around mental health challenges, and and all of us kind of sort of just by nature of stigma want to hide behind our own vulnerabilities. What was it? Was it really the medium of masking? Was it really the film? Like what was able to pull you out of that sort of hidden space and to be so front facing about
Mm.
it?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say it was one kind of specific thing or a specific moment. I do remember just wanting to not be in this space anymore. Um,
Mm,
and even before I knew how to get out of it. Also, I should say that, things like depression, things like especially like clinical examples of of mental issues, they don't just kind of snap and go away. Like it's a journey that you take. And so I don't want to say that, like, oh, I have the cure, I have the cure for depression. Like, it's not like that. It's more just what I was able to do was I was able to find a way to catalyze sort of my suffering and create and become creative with it, and through that creativity unpack it so that I could understand it and put it in context. Because I feel like, you know life, there's plenty of suffering to go around in life, but I think what's important is, that we are able to find meaning out of it, and that it contributes, because pain is not always uh purely a negative thing. Change, it can be painful, and change can be wonderful. And so being able to use arts as a way to take the difficulties in life and to create out of that instead of it sort of destroying, was kind of like an alchemy, I guess, that I found. So again, I couldn't say it was one point in time. I do know that having healthy relationships was just as important as my own
Mhm,
mental health, because that's what I leaned on, when I felt like I didn't have that within me. And so being able to reach out to other people, I think once you make that first initial reach out and start talking, you almost don't want to stop, because you've had all this stuff in you for so
yeah.
long. So yeah, I mean, I think having a supportive system of people who are down to just listen.
Could you talk, and certainly I wanna give you the liberty to say no, but could you talk about some of what you experienced? What was your mental health challenge?
Yeah,
Was it
sure. Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a conflation of things, and I do want to say, like, I've never been sort of diagnosed with like a actual clinical kind of diagnosis, whatever.
Mhm,
And I think that's kind of not as important. Like, I think the idea is that we all have struggles. And for me, it was a combination of, I've been doing music for a very long time in my life, and that's really what I wanted to do with my life. And I came to a point, almost a roadblock, where I couldn't see moving forward with that. And after putting so much of my time and energy into it, and then really feeling like I didn't have anything to show for it, or feeling like, I was sort of back to square one, um, was really, depressing. And then also on top of that was sort of, having that sort of quarter life crisis, where you're trying to figure out what the next step is. And you know I think the maturation process, especially I think for Black men, is so
mhm,
confusing, because there are these outer um, expectations that society puts on you, many of which are negative, um, and then there's this sort of inner expectation you have for yourself, but you don't really know who you are yet, and so it's very confusing. And so music was my bedrock. I could ground myself in my identity and who I
uh-huh,
was and what I
uh-huh,
wanted to do in that craft. And when that craft kind of, failed me, or at least I thought it
yeah,
failed me, I was really left with nothing. And so I sort of started to spiral from there, from that point on. Um, so I mean, yeah, I think, and also graduating from college, you know, that's kind of the way that you're supposed to go in life. That's the path where, you do that and you should be good. But as
right,
many of our
right,
generation
yes,
after us is seeing that's not the case,
yeah,
that could actually be a trap. And so there's all this stuff was kind of happening. I moved into my parents' place, which is something I never thought I would need to do after I graduated from college. And it was just a conflation of, like, wow, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing, and this is not where I thought I was going to be at this point in my life. And so all those things sort of added to it, and that kind of triggered self-doubt, which then ended up
mm,
being sort of like a
mm,
very angst-inducing kind of continual thing happening in my brain. So
yeah.
those are some of the things that I was dealing with. I mean, and we can talk
So
about external things, like, also deaths in the family, and
right.
you know all sorts of stuff that kind of contributed.
Well, it's interesting because that it's just as if you potentially are a prototype for what happens to Black Americans in general, because around the age of the late teens and college age is when really we start to experience the most
Mm.
disabling and crippling and intrusive mental health challenges. And for Black Americans, um, unlike white Americans, to be honest with you, actually anxiety is up there, but it's traumatic anxiety. Traumatic
Yeah.
anxiety comes from the experiences of being sort of in the internal and external world at odds, the racial pressures, the oppressive nature of our social systems, certainly trying to come to yourself, find who you are, that existential crisis, that those moments for Black Americans really are critically sort of challenging and can
Mhm.
often lead to where we have anxiety presenting, and most often the traumatic anxiety that presents for our Black community. So you read the book. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
well,
you
I
did.
mean, it's so interesting that you say that, and I appreciate you saying that because, the things I listed were specific things in my life, and some of them are actually privileged problems. But on top of all of that
Yeah,
is the notion of being a Black man in America,
yes.
is seeing, constant reminders that, you can be killed in the streets, constant reminders that your people are suffering, constant reminders that, you know, like when we grew up seeing these amazing leaders in our community, really pushing the needle forward, and it's like, who's taking the baton? It's a
Mm,
lot of pressure, and the stakes are so high,
yes,
and so all of those things are sort of layered on top of the everyday stresses, so it yeah,
definitely.
it compacts.
Definitely. And it's hard to say that there's educational structures that protect you from that, right? The Ivy League trainings, preparatory
Oh
schools,
man, they did a
right?
number on me.
And,
And my
right.
colleagues, like that's the thing, going to college, I saw, like, college was, it was almost like a gauntlet, like, and several of my classmates who I went in with did not make it, like, having to drop out, having to, reconsider things, having their mental health
Mm,
deteriorate, like, um and it's crazy, like, a lot of people dropped, and
yes.
it is, I did go to, a predominantly white institution, Ivy League institution, where it's even more so, it's even less of a sort of healthy um, 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 infrastructure there for folks like us. So yeah,
Well,
it's
yeah, and I'll be explicit about that for Blacks in particular, and
Mhm.
partially, that may not be your words, those are mine, but partially, so I'll take the heat on that one. But because when you look at the data, when you really look at sort of all of that's been sort of laid out before us relative to evidence and sort of trends relative to how people perform, what are the cultural structures that you perform best in. Black individuals have performed really well in supportive Black communities.
Mm,
And that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the only places that they perform. There is something about the elements and the recipe that is the Black community: supportive, nurturing, affirming, reassuring, safe, that when you leave that community, if it isn't duplicated, you are often in peril, because
mm,
there are going to be ways in which you fall off the map because you don't have these buffers to kind of hold you up against the assault that might be coming at you from an institution or a cultural structure that is not as as responsive, not
mm,
as sensitive and conscientious about the nuances of Black life. And there is something to be said for the nuances of Black life, because that is true. And I know, and I love. This is such a great segue into my next question for you about Black life in the film,
mm.
particularly. So it looks like, when we walk into the life of uh, um,
His name's
Yeah,
his Lee for
and
short.
no,
Lee for
no,
short. He's got a weird name.
I'm gonna tell you, I caught on to what you did there. I
Oh,
caught
did
on.
you?
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That's pretty clever. It's if anyone hasn't seen the film, and well, you probably won't know by just seeing the film. It's the main character is Daniel's name spelled backwards. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, his name
So,
is Leonard. Yeah,
so when yeah, Linod,
Mhm. Nahalik.
Mahalat.
Yeah,
I had to try to do your first
I know
name
it's
up.
a weird one. But
When you introduce him in the film, when you start us sort of knowing about him in the film, we start to see Black life playing itself out. Like you talked a little bit about that being your story to some degree, um,
Mm,
but really starting to see how sort of no end job, dead end job, no end job,
dead end
no
job.
end,
Yeah,
dead end, dead end job, coming back to
yeah.
your parents' home, feeling somewhat resigned. And so that is a powerful place to drop a Black story, to begin
Mm,
the Black narrative. Because what it does, I think, and you tell, and I love your whether this is really where you were going with that, it challenges us to get into the emotion of the life of the Black person. It
mm.
throws us right there into the context of an emotional experience. Is that where you were going with that?
Well, it's really interesting, and we kind of talked about this at another point in time where, and I want to use my words well here because I think oftentimes when it comes to cinema, we tend to sort of think of cinema as Black cinema and then cinema, where sort of Black cinema has its own kind of space, and the rules are somewhat different.
Uh-huh.
And it's understandable because of the history of cinema, because of the history of our country. Um, but the idea with cinema has always been to show the inner, the sort of inner workings of humanity, and to reflect that in a
Mhm.
powerful, nuanced way. And so, in that regard, I don't necessarily go out to make Black films. I just go out to make films about the things that I know, the things that I've experienced. And being a Black person, that's what you see. But it was important for me that I wasn't making necessarily a Black movie because I didn't want to do anything that was performative. Like Blackness to me is not something you perform, it's just something that you are.
Mm,
And so, showing, being true to characters, being true to experiences I've had I think was automatically going to be able to make a honest depiction of Blackness. It may not be your Blackness, right? Like it's Blackness is not a monolith, but it would be true to a Black experience, and that was important to me. And I knew to continue with that sort of sense of honesty was going to be important for the viewers watching, because it wasn't. I'm not
yes,
trying to make you think that you're seeing a Black story. This is a
yes.
story where the character is Black.
I like that. The thing that I really like about that is that there are so many different Blacknesses.
Yeah.
The common theme though being that there is this structure that we as Black Americans operate in and navigate around in that sort of monolith of Blackness, or the heterogeneous land of Blackness, that we have a common experience in with relationship to that thing, but as individuals, definitely we have different experiences of who we are and how we present as Black. I love that
Mm.
performative Black. I love that. I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna borrow that, and I am. I'm stealing it.
Yeah. Yeah, please. I mean, like, because it's important. Like, and I have to say, I've seen some films, and I'm not going to name names because that's not important, but I've just seen some films where it feels like they're pushing that this is a Black film down my throat, and it's just like, just let the
Mhm,
characters be themselves, because
mhm,
they're, what I mean, like, and that was important to me. It's like I've seen so many psychological thrillers, psychological dramas that are amazing, but I've seen very few that center Black people. And just by having a Black person centered, it automatically changes the film in a way that's wonderful. You don't need to overdo that,
Do it.
just feature them in their natural
Yeah,
state, because that's
yeah,
what we're talking about here. Like, these are just people being people. And yes, the Black experience is unique. Um, it is different than the dominant society, um, and we are all human beings, and that's the point. Is I want people to see this story and see a human being,
yeah.
going through something.
Yes, because you even said it that this is there when you looked for sort of Black films or films, a Black life and in mental health challenges related to Black life. Of the top 7, there were none, no
Yeah,
featuring Black male leads. And so just by nature of the creation of this film with a Black male lead and a narrative around Black mental health challenges that suddenly find their way in the narrative, you have done something that didn't need performing to do. It was just life in general. I love
yeah.
it. Can I ask you, did you have a sense that you wanted, because I was drawn emotionally into this character, but there was always this second character in the background.
Mm,
There was the unspoken, there was a person or a presence all
mm,
from the very beginning, sort of traveling through the scenes with me, even though there was no visible person there. And that also was a large part of what struck me about this film.
mm.
I imagine I'm trying to be elusive so that I can potentially
Yeah.
see if you get me where I'm going, but did the brother, and did you
Mm.
intend to tool the brother in that way? Because
Um,
obviously, right? Because he draws us back to suicide, right? He brings
yes,
us back to mental health.
yes.
So it in some respects, you're wondering about how he got where, what's the story, and he's looming large yet invisible.
Yeah, and I guess I think B, his brother, his story is very much sort of about that sort of intergenerational trauma, that sort of when we were talking earlier about just sort of being Black in America, like there's the stories that sort of we don't tell ourselves, but we all know. And there's a sense of loss, right? And that loss can be in terms of our history, in terms of our our self-knowledge, in terms of our autonomy over time. But there's that sense of loss that's always looming, and the concern about you being next. When we see things, when we see things like Ahmaud Arbery, when we see things like um, Sandra Bland, and all these things, like that could be me, and that sense of danger, that sense
Mm,
of loss is
mm,
always ever present. And that to me is sort of the symbol of what B represents, that people have come before and struggled with this, and often they have not had the support that they needed, and it's had disastrous consequences. And so when now you're experiencing what's going to happen with you, and that sense of uncertainty, I think, is kind of what that character represented, as well as just that he had a brother, and that his brother
was it was such
struggled
a
as well.
powerful use of the art form to
Mm,
pull us in that way. I was hooked from the very beginning, that
mm,
there was this deep sort of connection I felt to the film, but didn't quite know how to describe what it was, or to
mm,
until I saw him in the car,
mm.
until the brother B and Lenard sat in the car, Lenard sat in the car together and
You just call him Lee. It goes Lee by short, and it's funny. That's part of the film. It's like no one knows how to
I'm trying to
pronounce his
go
name,
back
so
to
he
her
he
name
just
or
goes by
something.
Lee. Yeah.
So yeah. So then when they were sitting in, and I was like, ah. That's what that was. Yes,
Mm,
this sort of looming presence. Oh, and you're exactly right. I think if I look back on it, it does relate me to experiences or my own sort of um, uh, connection to that grief, loss,
mm,
presence that sort of is always with me to some degree because there's the potential of loss, the
mhm,
potential of what destruction, um, and and I'm so glad you brought it into the film. So I guess through my lens, I was looking just at the suicide. So I was sort of drawing my gaze towards the suicide piece,
mm,
um, sort of, and thinking about the looming loss, but really, and then the mental health, the sort of defining that under a mental health umbrella, but really looking at the way you're now sort of stretching it out and talking about it as sort of it's just life experience loss. Oh,
mm.
wow. You know, um, how does that it's amazing to me that you in so many frames and probably in so many years. I'm not quite sure how long it took you to write this
Mm.
piece, to develop the idea. We're able really to capture so much of that of an experience that many see, don't know, but don't see.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, thank you. I appreciate that, and I mean, it did definitely take a while to kind of work out what I would include and what I wouldn't. Like, my first draft was like over 180 pages. Because there's just so much, right? Like, and I had to then
Right.
just pare it down. It's like you don't cover everything because then you won't cover it well. Like cover a few things and try to go deep into them. And then also just measuring that, showing instead of telling. um I didn't want to be didactic with this movie. I don't want to shove down an idea for you, for me to impart upon you. It's more just like, you know and that's, it's there are certain things that are ambivalent about the film too, right? There's certain questions it doesn't answer. And that's mainly because, that's, to me, that's more true to life. Like we go through these things, and it's really what we make of them that really
Mm,
ends up being, what defines us, right? I mean,
mm,
we're all subject to different traumas in life. And it's really a question of how we can move with that trauma,
yes.
how we can get through that trauma, and how we can contextualize that trauma that really
Yes.
determines what that trauma eventually does to us, right? And so, that was definitely part of it too. The film is very much about how one handles trauma.
And
um
you bring in your other art form in the film. Like, you
yeah.
use another one of your art forms to do just I'm imagining to do just that, to
Mm.
reference the trauma that gets morphed or fueled, tooled to express self. Talk to us a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, so there's separate, everything is sort of symbolic, right? So the sense of drowning is for Lee, the character Lee, is very much his symbol of trauma or crisis, right? So that sense of not having anything, under you to support you as you sink. And this, obviously we can think about the sunken place in terms of Get Out and things like that, where the sense of falling without anything to grab on or hold on to.
Mhm.
um, and then in response to that is him running from himself in a way. And when he finally takes a moment to face himself, um, he finds that foothold in himself. And I think, you know through that engagement with a practice of taking himself, and this is where masking, I think, is so powerful, that you take yourself. You're not creating anything outside of yourself, but you're using yourself as the medium of your art form. And so you become the piece of artwork, and
Mm,
you become a work of art. And you're recognizing that you are a work of art, something that's worthy to be looked at, that's something that has meaning, something that has value, something that can be beautiful or ugly, both things. And so that to me was important to bring into the piece, in terms of, here is an artist who doesn't know how to express himself anymore, doesn't know what he's supposed to do in life, um, and has sort of given up on being an artist in a way. How do we how does he find his way? And that's really through seeing the art that is within him, and seeing himself as, his only true really work of art is himself.
Mm.
And so, you know, he has the external things of like wanting to be successful and all that stuff, but that's not really what it's about. It's about, using what you have to create a new reality for yourself.
That's such a deep, profound concept. I mean, it's so simple, but it's
Mm,
also deep and profound, because it is quite something to get to the place where you can trust that there's ground below you, trust that there's ground beneath you, and that if you're floating, that you're safe and you can find your clarity within. And is that would I be right to say then that the middleman is the play on some of that as well? When the yes, I don't have to tell you who the middleman.
well, I mean, that's one of the things that the movie, again, is it never really tells you who the middleman is, right?
Right.
That's kind of what you like, you get
You're
to
left
interpret
to
who
kind
that
of
is.
ponder.
Right. But I think what is clear is that something has to be removed, right? Like something um has to be moved out of the way in order for him to get to where he needs to be. And he has to figure out what that is. And you know, I don't want to, again, I don't want to put that on audience to about what I think who that is or whatever. I want the audience to kind of come to their own conclusion about
Stop.
that.
I was like,
you,
wait, who is the
you can you can over explain your work sometimes. It takes some of the magic out of it if people are just sort of
it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal. And
thank
so
you.
I'm imagining then your work, and certainly from your CV and from the audience having heard me introduce you, the film is life for you. It lives outside of, sort of cinema. It is you doing work with kids. It's doing you doing work
Mm,
in conferences. It's you taking this message, if we were right, if you will, to anyone, the community is
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It has become my life. I mean, you know, the film came from the masking. The masking didn't come from the film, like, and yes, it's when I found a way for me to express myself, for me to heal myself. Um, it was a blessing to me, but then I realized that this is something that I could offer to others, and that opened up a whole nother world, like, and it's so interesting, that motion of going into to go out, like,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
and to change yourself first before, trying to change anyone else, and working on yourself before going to other people is so true. And once I did that work, yeah, like the whole world opened. I've done masking workshops in schools with teens. I've done them in teen workshops. I've done them at museums. And um, we're working on a masquerade ball, which is going to be this giant celebration of arts and culture of people of color happening in the Arnold Arboretum in
that's
July of
so
this year. Yeah, like, so, like, it's just it really has become just a blessing, and I realize I'm a steward over it. I'm just here to do my best to give what I can to it. It's definitely become larger than me, for sure.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Well, you are the right conduit, and we are all blessed and greater because you were willing to share and bring it to life. Bring
Mm,
bring it to life. so that we could touch it and connect with it and make it ours in
Mm,
whatever form we would. Um, you know, I have so many other questions I want to ask you, but the one that runs sort of in right at me right now is, so back to the mental health, your
mm,
personal mental health. What are you doing now to maintain it? Like, how do you? So it sounds like you came out, you did the film, you managed to kind of, to find find a find a platform, find a space,
mm,
find liberation.
mm.
How do you keep that? How do you manage? Where are you now in that?
Yeah, I mean, so thankfully I'm in a much better place. I can say that. Um, I think that there are the meta answers and like the practical answers, and I think we the practical answers are just as important, right? So practically, I have a therapist, which is very important, and that therapist is a black man, which was important
Wait,
to me.
hold
Um,
right there.
sure,
A black male therapist.
yeah.
What happens? Like, what that look like? That like, yo, what's up, Jew? How you doing, man?
Not so much. I mean, um,
I just
yeah,
can't. Like the image of therapy, right? Is like
uh-huh.
soft, cushy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Got two brothers. Like, how does
yeah.
that work?
I think this is really changing for like the next our generation, the next generation. Like, therapy's pretty normal now these days. Like, like it's. I tell people like, look, if you're going out to uh play sports or something, like you need a coach, right? And you need a trainer, right? Like if you're going out in the business world, you need to find a mentor, right? Like a therapist is really part of your team for you to be better, like. And so I think I'm hoping that people are seeing it less as sort of a reflection of your vulnerability or your weakness, and more of it as a true investment in your strength. Like you need to create a team for yourself, and that team needs to include friends. It needs to include, family, which may or may not be your biological. That doesn't matter. Like, but you need people around you, because that's what makes you strong. An individual can only do and can only take so much.
Mm,
So being smart, being strategic, you
mm.
surround yourself with a team of people who can help you become your better self. So that to me is what a therapist is. And so you know we go there, I go there, I talk about whatever we talk about, and he mainly listens, but he also helps me to work through things. And so he's a thought partner. He's so
Love
so
that.
yeah. And I did it took a while, unfortunately, to find a black uh male, although I was open to male, female,
Anyone. Uh-huh.
whatever. But it did take a while, unfortunately, because there's not so many folks practicing. The numbers aren't there. So that is difficult. Honestly, though, I mean, I think it is important for you to start that process with anyone, simply because if it doesn't work out, you can find out why it doesn't work, and then you can bring that to the next option.
Mm,
It's like speed dating. I mean, I guess, in a way, it's like find out what you need. It's
mhm.
all about that's what it's all about. Find out what you need and make sure that is there. It doesn't matter what it is. If you need it, make sure you find it, because that just makes you better.
Okay, so then I cut you off because you were saying, okay, they're practical things. I'm in therapy, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
oh wait, brothers in therapy. Okay, got it. Keep going. So what else are
Okay.
you doing to
Yeah.
maintain your health? Your
Sure. Sure.
wellness?
Uh, Having a healthier relationship with myself has allowed me to have healthier relationships with everybody. So like, working on that. I think also, basic things like diet, and making sure that I'm eating. I've found that like I get cranky when I don't eat, and like I didn't realize about myself, but like oftentimes I start to kind of get edgy, or at least on the edge, because I haven't eaten. So
Mm,
simple things like that, like, if I'm feeling a certain way, I ask myself, I don't have a checklist. Have you eaten? If you have not eaten, eat something, and then let's go back to this. Like,
mm,
stop thinking about this right now. Go
mm.
eat something, and then so like having those internal kind of checks on yourself. And then there's the external things, which is like find something that is larger than yourself that you can connect to. Like find something that involves more people, that has a larger outreach. Like that allows you to be of service to somebody else, because that gets you out of your head. And at the end of the day, you can feel good about something that you've contributed to something. Um, and that does a lot. It just does a lot, for your own
Yes,
sense of self-worth and sense of, um, well-being.
that's awesome. Di- So strategic,
Hmm.
self evaluation, do the checklist,
Hmm.
and then something bigger than yourself.
Hmm. But
You know,
I think it all starts with finding the other people around you, because I think for people who are either in crisis or people who feel like they're slipping into it, it's going to be hard to put all that onus on you in that moment to do those things. Like that's not the time to try
right,
to do those things,
right,
like
right.
yeah, you need to just find someone who you can talk to.
One, I was going, that's exactly where I was going, because I think that
Mm,
oftentimes what we think about is we think, well, we hear about mental depression and anxiety at the extreme. So we hear about it
mm,
so the suicidal state, and certainly
mm,
that is important and it is critical to understand. But there's all these things ahead before that that we
yes.
could be engaging ourselves in. We can sort of contain our lives in, such that we are strategic about
Mm,
how we combat and come and capitalize on all that we have to bring to this moment in time that we have printed gifted to us.
mm,
So that all those things, yes, I love that. I love that before we get there, there's all this other stuff that we need to be doing. Um,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. Thank you
And
for
that's
thank.
and to give props where it's due, I think that's where, race recovery comes in, because it's like, and you mentioned that I did Africana studies in school. Like learning about yourself, learning about your culture, like is so important to like just, building yourself up to be able to withstand some of the external kind of forces that you're going to run into, like that was huge for me. Like learning about, not only African American history, but the whole diaspora. And like, learning about like philosophy, and learning about African religions and that predated Christianity, and
Yes,
like connecting to your root, to your core. And I would tell anybody, like, don't let anyone tell you you don't have connections to Africa. Don't let anyone tell you that, oh no, I'm American, not whatever, all that stuff. You have a legacy in your gene, in your genetic, identity
makeup.
that you can tap into, and it's there for you, like, and so use it, it helps. It really does.
I love that. Wait, I'm gonna have to put up our banner. There it is. Because you
Boom.
just put for race recovery. Look, hello, I love
Yeah.
it. I'm like, that's exactly what. That's exactly why we're here. And I think that what becomes a challenge, and certainly this would be preaching to the choir, but is that I think Black people investing in themselves, taking pride in themselves, expressing joy for themselves, at times can feel confrontational to others. It can
Mm,
feel intimidating or too assertive or aggressive to
mm,
others. But the truth is, when you understand what it does, self preservation, what it does in being able to allow Black people to contribute fully, like you have now been able to experience and recognize and understand, it's a no brainer. It's a
mm,
no-brainer about that. Not only just Black people, anybody, but
right.
because Blacks have had a lack of space to really
Right.
define their history, to determine their identity, to self-advocate and self-preserve, that
Mm,
they're it's important to have a space that
mhm.
allows us to sort of let our hair down and come in and say, my blackness, my black identity, I get to celebrate. Thank you, Daniel, for plugging us for that one. I love that.
Oh
Thank
man, it's so real. It's so like it's so authentic. It's so real. Like, like and that's why this is so important. Like,
Yes,
spaces like this are so important.
yeah. So what's the next thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about shameless plugs. The film is out. It's on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Apple TV, and several other places. So I mean, I think that's huge. We're still pushing that. The other thing that's on the horizon is this mask ball I was saying before. Again, this is happening at the Arnold Arboretum, July 9th. Even before that, though, the beautiful thing about this iteration of the mask ball is that we're having precursor events leading up to the ball. We're really sort of setting the context around, what does it mean to have sort of cross-cultural collaboration? What does it mean
Mhm,
for people of color in the aggregate to sort of find ways to come together and support each other? And why is that important? Because while it is important for us as Black people to find our center, our root, our core, and to build upon ourselves, it's also important for us to find folks to collaborate with who understand the experience of being oppressed, who understand the experience of being a minority, and who have empathy and who have movements of their own that we can all learn from each other to be better, right? And we're better in numbers. So, what does that mean, and how can we approach that? So that's one thing. I'm also working on a documentary called the Color of Corona, on the dual impact of racism and the COVID pandemic on Black and Brown communities here in Boston.
mm.
Um, and I am also working on my own music, which is kind of cool. We started this conversation
Went
about.
back? You went back to
Yeah,
music?
and yeah, I'm going back to music, which is awesome. And so, I'm working on a few projects around that, including sort of a one-man show about my relationship with God, hip hop, and education. So we talked about the trials of going to predominantly white institutions, and knowledge, and how where you get your knowledge determines how you perceive yourself. And then also, Christianity, and how it's been so important to the Black community, but how there's also challenges in Christianity that have challenged the Black community. So really having an open conversation around that. And then, obviously hip hop. Hip hop is really, that's where I draw all of my artistic influence
Mm,
from, is hip hop,
mm,
because, hip hop was more than just rap music, right? It was graffiti, it was breakdancing, it was bringing all these different things together, all these different mediums together to express our humanity, our worth, our creativity. And so that I'm working on as well. And yeah, I mean, I'm also the president of the Roxbury Cultural District. And so that
do you
was
see?
designated state designation that basically uh, uh, admitted that Roxbury as a community is a very central repository of arts and culture in Boston, and that
Mm,
it needs to there needs to be a formal body to help preserve and maintain that. And so, we are. I have a board of folks, and we're actively trying to preserve the arts and culture in Roxbury. Um, and yeah, I mean, a bunch of other things, but it's all based around how can I, through art, promote more healthy, um and beautiful experiences for people, for my people. So
I love it. Daniel, that time has flown. Oh my goodness. We're at the hour. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Woo. This
Thank
was
you.
what? Thank you. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to follow you, to get to
Mm,
connect with all that you're going to be doing in the coming years or the months, weeks. You're busy. But and I feel a kindredness with the work
mm,
that you're doing, particularly around trying to make sure that the art form is a way that we've come to be expressive as a people, just as Rich Recovery is attempting to bring people in a healthy mental health, wellness
mm.
place, identity place as a people. I thank you. This is phenomenal. Thank you for the time that you shared with us today. We, audience, we wish him well. Please go watch the film on Amazon Prime
Mhm,
and Apple TV.
mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
It,
Yep.
and and tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell your family, tell everybody to go watch, support the development of Black healthiness in our community through all forms. This one tonight is through our beloved brother Daniel Callahan. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
all that you do.
Oh, that's very kind. We'll see you again. So, Race Recovery, I want to thank you for joining us again tonight. We are at that time, we're at an hour. I want to just, oh my goodness, there are no words for how to to capture what conversation we had. I told you it was going to be good. We knew it was going to be good. You did not want to miss this. So anyway, continue to follow us. Continue to connect with our community. Continue to build with us, because at the heart of this is the intention to create a body of work for Black lives that is strong in identity, affirming in our pursuits, and clear in our intentions and who we are, and liberated from any obstructions and hindrances. That is the Race Recovery Project. Join us again next time. We're so happy that you joined us today. Good night. All right, wait, let me get you back over here. Wait, what? Oh, wait, I better stop. Stop.